Before we start, just a reminder that I have a Twitch page where I stream 3 days a week. The link is in the description below. Thanks everyone. Previously on my lineup of driver reviews, I haven't been very kind to, well, the entire franchise. Quickly summarizing, though I was a fan of being able to free roam on multiple 3D maps around the American continent, the damage models on cars were detailed and the chases are exciting, I feel like any criticism of the PS1 titles, for example, is justified. Time limits give you no margin for error whatsoever. Everything and everyone can put you either to a complete stop or slide out. The difficulty curve is all over the joint, especially in Driver 2. They've really shown their age is what I'm saying. I guess slightly less so than the GTA titles on the PS1, but I don't plan on replaying them again unless it's for review purposes like this. Driver 3 was supposed to be the rival to the Grand Theft Auto titles in the 2000s, with new publisher Atari putting all their eggs into this one basket commercially. Instead, it became a rushed, broken monstrosity. Okay, the car's controlled alright, but look at the on-foot gameplay. I don't care what Peter says, it's not a good game. And what would be known as Drivergate, Atari knew this and spent a long time putting their fingers in their ears and screaming, la 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 la, the game's fine, you're all wrong. Fixing review scores and silencing any criticism on multiple gaming forums. And when they got caught, they tried to delete every single thing even mentioning the scandal. Well, at least my review of Driver 3 is still up on YouTube, so it sounds like Atari don't care anymore. I think I'm safe. But despite all that, Atari confirmed another title when Sony announced over 100 games for their upcoming PlayStation 3 in 2005. Although whether it meant San Francisco or parallel lines, it's unknown. The latter would be released on March 2006, and while a much better title, there was a sense it was playing too safe. No Tanner continuation, no Martin Edmondson, no personality. It was basically a generic GTA clone that had Driver in the title. And the disaster of Driver 3 and other bad business decisions from Atari forced them to sell as much as they bought half a decade earlier to recoup their losses, selling the Driver franchise and Reflections Interactive to Ubisoft for $24 million on July the same year, with Martin Edmondson retaking the reins after briefly quitting the game industry thanks to the Drivergate fiasco. Development began in 2007, and this lack of innovation throughout the mid-2000s was something Edmondson wanted to restore order to. The developers took inspiration from Google Earth, where you're able to zoom in and out and swap between multiple vehicles on the map in real time, since they omitted the ability to move around on foot for this game because they felt players compared the series too much to the Grand Theft Auto series as a result. What would be known as shifting was a clever alternative. They spent a lot of time making sure you didn't feel overpowered using this move, since you can use it in an unlimited number of times, even during missions. It essentially opened new gameplay opportunities. But they didn't forget the second pillar, recapturing what made the first Driver title a classic, the returning characters, muscle cars, and the city of San Francisco. It was the perfect setting for car chase films half a century ago, and Reflections were a fan of how diverse this place was compared to other cities across America, with its iconic landmarks and steep elevation, all the toys you need for the perfect driving open world sandbox.
Hell, I thought you drove like a lunatic before!
My dial goes all the way up to 11. We're just on 2.
Ubisoft confirmed a new Driver title in January 2010, registered these domains a few months later, indicating that it would be set in San Francisco before announcing the game's title at E3. However, deja vu kicked in with the game being delayed, including staff layoffs in November 2010, with rumors that the studio was transitioning to a support developer after the game's release, although a Ubisoft representative claimed it was simply reorganization, more like a sign of things to come. Fortunately, the game didn't go through the same teething problems as Driver 3, as Ubisoft wanted to make sure it was finished before they release it. And early impressions of anyone that played it were very positive. Driver San Francisco was finally released for the PC, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Nintendo Wii on September 2011. As I've mentioned in countless videos on this channel, I didn't start to read about gaming news of an upcoming game until GTA 5 and Gran Turismo 5 to a degree. Otherwise, I just mind my own business and realized, oh, a new game from a familiar franchise is out. I knew about Driver San Francisco, but I was too attached to anything by Rockstar Games at the time. And it was thanks to my Patreon supporters over the last few years that requested me to review the Driver series did it finally get to the point where it was crushingly inevitable that San Francisco would be next. Supposedly physical copies have gotten more expensive over the last year or two, at least outside of Australia. It's probably thanks to the game not being available on digital stores thanks to expired licensing of vehicles, but that's a little excessive. It's It's certainly not worth spending that much on a driver game, even if, spoiler alert, this one is really enjoyable. Fortunately, I managed to find a copy from Hunted Antiques late 2022 for only $10, and I got the Xbox 360 version because it's backwards compatible with the Series X. Because of the psychological thrill aspects of the story, it's impossible to not throw a few minor spoilers, so you've been warned.
KEOC News, your eyes on the city, with me, Jessica Adams. Next up, it's a big day for justice. Convicted cop killer and international smuggling kingpin, Charles Jericho, faces sentencing later today.
Taking place straight after the events of Driver 3, when both John Tanner and Charles Jericho were left critically injured from a shootout in Istanbul. Unsurprisingly, they survived. However, Jericho was able to escape to San Francisco, where Tanner and his partner Tobias Jones were able to recapture him. And as Jericho is being detained in a prison convoy, Tanner wanted to make sure no shenanigans occurred, and just as Jones convinces him to celebrate with a beer...
You know something, partner? Maybe you're right. God damn it!
Yeah, I think Tanner regrets not killing Jericho when he had the chance. They were able to stay on his tail and try and ram him off the road, but after being tangled by some heavy traffic, they're involved in a huge crash that leaves Tanner in a coma. Seriously, he can't catch a break at this point.
Tanner! Tanner! Tanner!
But hang on, what happened?
Jericho's got a head start.
You alright, man?
Yeah, fine.
Things are normal according to Jones, but Tanner still hears voices appearing as if he's also in a hospital. And then...
How am I up here? Oh my god. I'm not falling. I gotta get down. Okay, focus. There. I'm good.
Turns out Tanner can take control of anybody behind the wheel in San Francisco.
Just pray someone's
Hold
watching
on.
over us.
Those voices. They're coming from that patrol car. Okay, why not? You want me to help people? I'll help people.
Realizing he was still a cop, wanting to help people as best as he could, and potentially having the advantage over Jericho, who's still roaming the streets with an elaborate plan to hold the city hostage with a chemical weapon, Tanner uses this newfound power to dive further into Jericho's operations, taking control of countless civilians, cops, and crooks.
Stay close, but don't be obvious.
That's my car.
What?
Including some of Jericho's lackeys to connect the dots, giving the term undercover a whole new meaning.
Just relax.
Enough messing around. You want to fight, Jericho? You got it.
Okay, yeah, as you'd expect, this took a long time, not to understand what is happening, but how it all makes sense. Like how things are suddenly normal immediately after a nasty accident. Alright, fine, the answer is that everything you see is all a dream. One of the most cliched and worst twists you can use in any form of storytelling. And yes, Tanner can dream the city in such detail, the layout, the car brands, and the people incredibly vividly. Thing is, it's made clear at the beginning of the story with the hospital sound effects while in the middle of shifting and occasionally cutting to Tanner in the hospital. It's the only way it makes sense. Even Martin Edmondson explained before the game was released, there are things in the story that happen in the real world that influence what's going on in Tanner's mind while in a coma, considering he's listening to the news on his hospital bed, and of course Charles Jericho being Tanner's enemy and rival throughout the entire franchise. It's certainly unique, and it leaves the window open for many psychological twists in the story. You can't predict what's going to happen next. What other ability does Tanner discover, or who's connected to Jericho, whom they made to appear very smart with a lot of connections, being a step ahead, seemingly more unstoppable.
It's not some vendetta or revenge plot.
Revenge sounds like your game, Tanner. I mean, who's inside who's my deal, right?
Yeah, it's not him. He's smarter than this.
Thank you.
As you'd expect from the game's title, it's all set on one map, San Francisco. It's a very well-sized one with all the landmarks and elevations that make Golden City distinct, including both Golden Gate and Bay Bridges, the ferry building, Lombard Street. If only there was a hidden jump where if you're quick enough you can land on Alcatraz Island. Believe it or not, at 208 miles of road, this map is actually smaller than Parallel Lines New York at 222 miles, in which the whole thing was drivable from the get-go. But while the concept of having multiple timelines on one map has so much potential, the distance between the safe houses and mission markers were way too far, and there was barely anything to do outside the story missions, which made the game feel like a shallow experience overall. It's weird to think these two are part of the same franchise. Actually, let's just compare Driver 3. Again, it's weird to see these two are part of the same franchise.
told you, no dumbass gangster driving.
I can't help it.
San Francisco runs in 60 frames per second, even on consoles, and I assume the increased frame rate was because of the Series X optimization, but all versions run smooth, even on the Nintendo Wii. Now, like a lot of games that prefer the graphical settings on performance rather than ray tracing like Burnout for example, it's not as detailed compared to, I don't know, Midnight Club LA for example, and it also has a grainy filter during gameplay. Like I have the bitrate setting very low when capturing footage, and it's not like it's the console or anything, but if you wanted to achieve 60 FPS on consoles from earlier generations, you needed to make a few compromises.
This is going to be perfect. You, me, and a head-on collision.
Yeah, that's so romantic. But wait, are you serious?
I also respect how Reflections continue to give nods to their previous games. The OST sounds like it came from the first driver. I really like the menu music. The skill chase can, the director mode returns, and it literally continues the story from Driver 3 when it could have easily kept as far away as possible after having such a disastrous release that caused Martin Edmondson to initially quit the entire gaming industry. There are no references to parallel lines from what I can tell, no Terry Kiddums, but this is Tanner's story again. It returns to the city where he grew up and where the car chase genre reigns supreme, with a psychological twist.
So, let me get this straight. Would you zap into a fine-looking lady?
I keep my hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
Like Tanner, it took a bit to grasp the idea that I can enter and exit cars without moving around on foot. There's absolutely no on-foot gameplay whatsoever, and apart from Layla Sharan in the cutscenes, no weapons. I almost forgot to mention that. Maybe it's because I wanted to blank out any of my experiences whenever Tanner or TK was running around in previous Driver titles, which might also explain why this game is rated PG in Australia. Shifting between other people's consciences is a clever alternative of switching between vehicles, but not physically getting out of the car to steal it off them. And it opens a window for multiple gameplay opportunities, things that haven't been seen in a driving game before. Taking inspiration from Google Earth, whenever you go into shift mode, time almost completely stops and you can move around the map and literally select another vehicle you want.
You're the only one who wants me to go to these stupid violin lessons.
Fine then, let's do something else.
You can stick to the car you like, you can change every 3 seconds, and as you advance through the story and unlock more of the map,
Can't go through that.
Through what? Okay, we are definitely taking you to the hospital. This is
Tanner can zoom out further and further out, so you can literally shift anywhere on the map, and it's practically instantaneous. I also like the chroma eyeball when you change, reminding you that Tanner is still in the coma. On first impression, the franchise is going through an identity crisis. I mean, how did we go from a video game equivalent of a 60s or 70s car chase film to that same character in the present flying around the whole of San Francisco taking control of any soul unfortunate enough to be caught in the crossfire? Martin Edmondson wanted to avoid duplicating features that were common in other open world games. The first Driver, the first where you're, well, driving in a 3D open world map. Driver 2, you can exit and steal other vehicles, and Driver 3, okay, he understandably didn't mention that one.
Got anything constructive to say? No.
I'm gonna burn some rubber, baby.
Oh no, you won't!
This shifting from one car to another reminds me of Midnight Club LA or Grand Theft Auto 5, where you're able to zoom out on the map and shift to another part almost in a snap with barely any loading times. That is a very impressive technical achievement. It gives you a high sense of freedom, which I haven't come across in other open world games I've reviewed recently. And going back to the story, it's the way the characters sell how over the top things are, and we the player just decide to play along with it.
What kind of a twisted... Hell, John, stop questioning this stuff and get on with it.
The mysterious billboards telling him what to do. There could be a passenger in the car who sees the same person who suddenly knows how to drive like a pro.
So far, so good.
So far, you're going to college and not prison.
Tanner realizing he's another person and throws in a few actually funny quotes.
Choo! It's like you're possessed.
In a good way, right?
And the way Tanner needs to prove his shifting ability to Jones, he might or might not be there, and yet the chemistry between these two is still very strong.
Something just doesn't make sense.
Oh yeah? Well, just add it to my list of crap that don't make sense when I'm with you.
However, there's more to Drive at San Francisco than shifting. As you advance, you learn new techniques, both teleportation and driving mechanics, including boost, which technically isn't nitrous.
Whoa! Yeah! Who needs nitrous?
And spearing into vehicles.
Huh, wasn't expecting that.
Basically everything the PS1 driver titles could desperately use, especially in survival. Shows how little Tanner cares for the safety of civilians in this city if he's willing to throw all the ones he controls into the kind of danger that put him in a coma to begin with.
Hell, I'm locked into this now, so I might as well enjoy it.
That's the spirit. Better a brawler than a bellyacher, right?
Damn straight.
If there's one ability I beg through throughout the story, it's being able to slow down time like Midnight Club, given the frantic pace with heavy traffic where you advance further, one slip up, you might as well hit restart.
The car's all right.
You can take a new car, John. Who cares?
But to be fair, the checkpoint count is really high, especially for a driver title, so it's obviously nowhere near as hard as the PS1 games, for example. Difficulty-wise, it sets a better first impression, and the beginning doesn't feel like a tutorial. Everything feels like it's part of the story, slowly giving you new mechanics after given enough time to comprehend what you've already got.
Come on, let's put this thing to bed, Tanner. I see accommodation and a big medal in my future.
Oh, that's funny. I see warm beer and a night of filling out reports.
Let me dream, damn it.
All this dream-induced driving earns you skill points, which are used for currency to purchase stuff, including upgrades, challenges, vehicles, and garages. In a way, this map has two branches of advancement. The yellow challenges are the mandatory ones in advancing the story, expanding San Francisco, and you don't need your own vehicle for them.
Here we go, everyone. Hold on tight. Hoo-wee!
That's a wrap! And I smell awards.
And the blue one is like a career mode more akin to Need for Speed or Midnight Club, where it's more about earning experience to purchase faster, more exotic vehicles and upgrade your telekinetic abilities, which to a degree makes life in the story mode a little easier, but essentially the other game modes being implemented into the story mode on this map. I found myself attached to the story missions to a degree that by the time I actually completed the entire story, I still had my Alfa Romeo 159 that's clearly not keeping up with the rest of the field in something like the races, for example. You need something like a Ford GT.
Oh yeah, this is the real deal. Way too much grunt for a greenhorn.
This is the only driver title to include real-life car manufacturers. It could be because, like most racing games, the brands don't like their models appearing as though they're fit for the scrap after 1 minute of gameplay, and or Atari not having enough money left to include these brands. But with Ubisoft money, well, that's a different story.
She shook up, but she'll be alright.
And there are plenty of brands and model types, not just in the showroom, but scattered all over the map. It seems like there are 3 cars scattered in one area like they're cloned, and everything in the showroom is overpriced. I was worried there would be an option to pay with real money, an early example of a game encouraging you to do the latter. This is published by Ubisoft after all. But at least in the story-based missions, the yellow markers, they have their own vehicles. I mean, any excuse to drive an Audi R8, Pagani Zonda, or Porsche 911, I mean, RUF is fine by me.
Okay, here goes.
Oh God, I see it! Keep her steady! We did it! We did it!
Hey, don't get ahead of yourself. We've still got one more to go.
This is still suicide, man!
Only if we die.
It's so weird to go from the old muscle Oldsmobile in the olden days of the old PS1 to suddenly driving licensed cars that grip to the road like glue. All the cars control superbly, especially the supercars when weaving through heavy traffic that recognize you even when you're going through intersections at top speed. It's so exhilarating but manageable, while still retaining some of the classic physics from previous driver titles. And Stuntman, let's not forget about that game. Drifting and racing takes some getting used to, being on the gravel part of the map where it resembles closer to Burnout Paradise with cars more prone to sliding. It feels like when you attempt a good drift, you lose more time, which pressures you to drive faster and just end up ramming into barriers nearly every corner. And nor are there many opportunities to perform handbrake turns like I normally did in the predecessors. At least I know how different drivetrains react cornering and handbrake turns. I don't know, I'm just so used to Driver 3 in parallel lines when you slide, suddenly it grips. I'm just saying it's an entirely different experience switching from one generation to another. And even then, you're shifting between other vehicles so frequently you never think about how cars control.
Have you noticed how smug I look today, Sergio?
Not really, no. Why?
When talking about Driver San Francisco, the driving mechanics, ironically, aren't the primary focus. There's more than the conventional methods of skillful driving or trying to ram something off the road you get in video games. As you advance through the story, you understand the extra powers Tanner has, and as it gets harder, the more it encourages you to use these telekinetic tools, therefore reducing the repetitiveness later down the line. Say you can't keep up with the opponents on the road, or this enemy vehicle can take way more damage than you, suddenly you realize, Hang on, I've got San Francisco on my side. Just throw as many toy cars into a cannon as you can. And cut. Yep, that's a wrap. This is my favorite thing to do, swapping between cars to try and destroy them. It's that burnout part of my brain, the game to be precise. Seriously, this never gets old. You're essentially reenacting the survival mode in the PS1 driver titles, but you're the aggressor. Though I wish the enemy vehicles didn't have to keep respawning at the same locations. Some of these missions feel like homages and satires to the predecessors, and feels like you're doing something different every time. It's the variety and dialogue between countless number of people on the streets of San Fran that prevents it from, well, feeling repetitive. I found it really hard to put this game down when capturing gameplay, and that on its own makes Driver San Francisco worth playing. If I have to nitpick, when you smash a vehicle it shows a flashback, but you can't control the car for a few seconds. And there have been multiple occasions when it cuts back to the gameplay and I'm either about to hit a barrier or I've already slid out beyond my control. Or whenever you drive down one of these steep streets, it's very easy to have a head-on collision with a vehicle you clearly can't see on camera, and that's really annoying. Mind you, cars control better and have time limits only when they're necessary. Again, the difficulty, okay, maybe a bit too easy for a driver game. It could be the surprise of the high checkpoint count in each mission, since the PS1 titles had, well, none. But each one completed feels rewarding. It has the difficulty curve set just right, with drivers becoming progressively more skilled, being able to swerve your attacks, they're faster. It encourages you to use as much of the map, including alleyways, jumps, and cars as possible. Meanwhile, your powers slowly expand over time, and it feels like you're doing something different every mission. You want lights, camera, action, 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 you clearly have a lot to work with driver's mode. Yeah, everything comes together into one neat little package and provides so much of what we love about the open world and arcade racing genre, while having a party piece in the form of shifting. Listen to myself, a ColourShed review of a driver game that's very positive for once?
Yeah, but you saw it. I'm not losing my mind. It's real.
Yeah, it looks that way.
Well, there's not much to criticize about Driver San Francisco. I really like this game from beginning to end, and if you can find a copy at a good price like I did, it's worth it. And it makes you wonder what Driver 3 would have been like if it wasn't unfinished, if most of the same team made this a generation later. Unfortunately, commercially, it wasn't as successful as Ubisoft were hoping. Okay, they said it exceeded expectations in 2011, but it wasn't enough. Because the last few titles Ubisoft Reflections have released since then is The Crew, a few Just Dance games, ATOMEGA, and are now basically a support developer. Considering how many open world games Ubisoft have released over the years, it's surprising they have an established name in Driver collecting rust. Worse still, San Fran was taken off digital stores in 2016, making physical copies the only way to buy this game, and yeah, they're not cheap. Why not get the remaster treatment like Burnout Paradise or Need for Speed Hot Pursuit? Supposedly, if Reflections wanted to make a new Driver game, Ubisoft would happily let them, but they've chosen to become a support developer so work isn't as stressful, which I respect. The only thing we've heard about the franchise are plans to turn it into a live-action TV show, which given the rise of movies and TV shows based off video games, it doesn't sound like a bad idea, particularly one inspired by car chase films half a century ago. But I can imagine a lot of people wanting to see Reflections make at least one more Driver game, and with endless divisions under Ubisoft's watch, they wouldn't have to worry about doing all the work themselves. If not, then San Francisco. What a way to conclude a franchise.
Jones, I had everything under control.
Under control? Man, you were about to wreck my damn car. Now can we please get that beer?
Thank you everyone on Patreon, including Anthony Cossins, Bibbs, Brittleback, Buster Pixel, Cooper Munn, Darcy McIntosh, Emmanuel Figueroa, Eric Barboza, Atmosphere, Indy DM, Mike Camilli, Ruben Pacol, Sam Sneed, Tickford45, and Thomas Rosendale, as well as everyone watching this review. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, support on Patreon, join the Discord server, follow on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. No shortage of links to support ColourShed. Thanks again for watching, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, all the best for 2024, and Spenny out.